Moving now to the economy. Sorry, another depressing topic. However, we've had a bunch of cheerful headlines about the economy lately. We talked about some of them yesterday. Axios is telling us how the U.S. economy adapted to 5% interest rates. The Wall Street Journal says booming profits are shielding the economy, and tells us also that buybacks are back and corporate America is on a spending spree. So all over the press, we have people eager to talk about how the economy is doing great. The economy is adapting so well. We did yesterday learn that jobless claims had risen to their highest level in 8 months. And what happened? The Dow Jones shot upward. So more people are out of work. Fewer jobs are being created, but profits are booming and the economy is adapting well. And I guess all of the Americans who keep reporting lower and lower consumer confidence are just dummies, or we are realizing that maybe we aren't actually part of this quote unquote economy. So we're going to talk about what is going on here with our friend Steve Grumbine. He's the founder and CEO of the nonprofits Real Progressives and Real Progress in Action. He hosts the podcast Macro and Cheese, and he's a leading activist and evangelist for modern monetary theory. Thanks for joining us, Steve.
Hey, it's been a while. Thank you for having me.
I mean, these headlines are driving me insane. So we got corporate profits on an upswing. U.S. companies are reporting their first quarter results. Earnings per share in the S&P 500 are up 5.2% from a year earlier. It's way better than they predicted. It's the strongest growth in nearly 2 years. They're expecting it to continue with predictions that second quarter earnings per share will be up close to 10%. And the Wall Street Journal tells us corporate profits are important because they show the U.S. economic engine continues to purr. While some other economic indicators, such as consumer sentiment readings, have been downbeat and inflation has ticked up, strong U.S. profit performance usually points toward continued expansion. So, profits are somehow shielding the economy. Axios tells us these titans have adapted to 5% interest rates, but the way they adapted seems to be locking in lower interest rates before and being bailed out so there wasn't any cascade of bank failures. And so I wanted to ask you to put these stories together for us. How have these businesses really adapted to this crisis, and who are these profits shielding?
Yeah, the profits are shielding our eyes from reality. And what's happening is that if you read the articles that we're frequently looking to, and some of the ones you forwarded to me as kind of like setting the stage for this, they kind of speak as if we're all of the same class, of the same interest, of the same troubles and concerns. And we're not, because when they talk about suppressing wages to ensure the economy is doing well, Michelle, I don't know about you, but every time I go to pay my rent or my mortgage or my other bills, the thought of my wages being suppressed doesn't make me feel good.
Right.
But this is how they present it in there. So when you're reading these articles, it's important to have a class analysis. It's important to ask, who is their target audience by saying, hey, doing good by keeping wages down, right? That is a clear indication that they're not talking to the working class.
Yeah.
And the more I think about, how to frame some of this stuff, realize this. Every time they try to, quote unquote, get inflation down, what they do is they tame the working class. They try to hurt our income streams. They try to increase the cost of credit. That is one side of that balance sheet. Mm-hmm. The other side of that balance sheet, however, is one person's spending is another person's income. Higher prices means higher income for someone else. Mm-hmm. Lower wages on one side means more profit for someone else. Mm-hmm. And GDP, when you think about gross domestic product, which is the most heralded of all the macro measures, it looks like it's just doing out of this world. It's just screaming, and screaming so much, and profits are so big that you're watching corporations once again do stock buybacks to manipulate the price of their stocks. And while taming wages, they're giving outrageous bonuses to the C-suite as they create the conditions that increase that profit motive and increase that profit margin. So it's it's a challenge because the articles always come at it from a business perspective. They're always talking about it from the standpoint of the CEO's perspective. And quite frankly, you're right. We're not in this economy. We are not part of this economy. In fact, most of these businesses are not really producing anything. They're merely like hedge funds with holdings and different stock portfolios and stock prospectuses, and they are moving and shaking in that financial realm, not in the hey, we're making things and we're selling things and our people are thriving, blah blah blah. That's
Yeah,
not
like,
part of their angle.
let me ask you, because I really don't know if this, I mean, maybe it's sort of simple-minded to say there are two different economies, but I wonder, are they always this separate? Because they really seem to be. We are looking at indicators that are pointing absolutely in two different directions, right? Like we've talked about profits going up. The Wall Street Journal also tracked mentions of recession in earning calls this year, and they are relatively low compared to other quarters in the last 5 years. So we'll put that in the pile with earnings and profits and the corporate buybacks that we're going to talk about in a minute. But on the other hand, as I mentioned, we have fewer jobs being created. We have a pretty big increase in initial jobless claims. We have consumer sentiment going down for the third month in a row and is now at an index that historically indicates a recession is coming. We have the number of seriously underwater homes where people carry loan balances of at least 25% more than the home's market value. That is climbing. And it feels like I genuinely don't know if this is how things usually are, or if we are seeing a deeper division than historically we have been. And maybe this is something about the pandemic recovery or whatever. Or like I guess, are the rest of us going to be pulled in to this sort of positive economy at any point? Or is this gap just getting bigger and bigger?
The gap's getting bigger and bigger. And let me tell you what's going on here, okay? We have to start with the big inflation word, all right? Everybody wants to talk about inflation, but as time has gone on and we've gotten away from the supply chain disruptions from the pandemic and so forth, new studies have come out, and economists such as Isabella Weber, who has coined the term seller's inflation, show that these corporations took signals, and I've spoken on this program several times about that, where they hear, hey, they're spending money, et cetera, and they turn those things into opportunities to say, oh, inflation, it's going to be inflationary because the government spent money. And so they use our misperception of what causes inflation to justify their raising of prices and so forth. Now, you asked another really important question. Are we ever going to be able to partake in this? We have not seen a real inflationary event in a very long time up until now. It had been a very, very, very long time. I mean, because you figure, during the housing crash, I mean, they had dropped interest rates down to below zero. I mean, it's like zero interest rate policy had been in effect for over a decade. We had been sitting here, living a life where inflation wasn't a thing, and inflation still wouldn't be a thing, but the signals were there for people to gouge. And so what we're experiencing is commodities such as fuel pricing that has gone up, and we know we've seen different text messages and different other, voices out of the dark showing that was gouging. These guys, they live to raise profit to make the most for their shareholders, for sure. But here's the thing. When you don't understand what interest rates do, people think interest rates are just going to tamp down the economy. Well, interest rates are a new net money infusion into the economy. By jacking interest rates up, It sends money to people who already have money. And for those who don't have money, who have to borrow, what it does is it raises the cost of borrowing. So you're watching the rich get richer during this time period and also charging more for their products during this period. And people themselves had grown used to a certain lifestyle during the pandemic, had taken on debts and stuff based on the pandemic. And now all of a sudden, with interest rates up, they're having to take out private loans to pay for the things that they took out back then that they could afford back then. And now that they're driving into an office again, now that they're, worrying about laundry and doing all the other things that take them back and forth to an office, their actual disposable income has dropped as well. So you're witnessing the balkanization of society, the haves and the have-nots. And it's very important to have a class analysis for this, to not just read these things like we're all in the same boat. We're not all in the same boat.
And we're clearly
we're not experiencing it at all.
And it is sort of funny, like these articles that will acknowledge it, or acknowledge that there are other indicators pointing the other direction, but they don't really matter. I mean, it's really funny. It's shocking to me that we don't see more like reckoning with this. I also wanted to ask about this share buyback spree that apparently corporations are in the midst of. The S&P 500 companies have reported, the ones that have reported their first quarter results already have also disclosed that they've bought back $181 billion worth of their shares in the first quarter, which is 16% more than the same quarter last year. Leading the charge are companies like Meta, Apple, Netflix, and NVIDIA, but Wells Fargo is also in there, and Caterpillar, the construction company. Just as an aside, I don't know what Wells Fargo has to do to get just broken up. I'll just really stand out when it comes to corporate, evildoers. But buybacks, right? They put money into the hands of shareholders. That money is going other than to operational costs, which might be labor costs or new investment by the company. It raises the value of a company's stock. Seems to me trends like this are only going to deepen the divide that we are already talking about. Could you talk about how this, accelerates that process?
Absolutely. First of all, stock buybacks used to be illegal. We knew it was a stupid idea. We knew it was bad. But when I say bad and I say a stupid idea, I know this is difficult because people are so used to just thinking about we, the American people, or we, the working, or whatever. This is class war for reals, okay? What you're dealing with is companies literally manipulating their stock prices by buying the stuff back instead of investing in the next wave of innovation, instead of investing in their employees' development, instead of investing in better health care, all these things that they always, try and wear like a badge of honor during other times. Right now, they're not, it's like eyes wide open and mask off. They are buying back their stocks. And guess who benefits from that? The existing stockholders, those people like the CEOs and so forth that get these perverse incentives to basically snatch up all the fat from the company. And so on one hand, they're crying poor mouth. They got to lay people off because, oh my goodness, we're not, I don't even know I don't even have a good excuse for why they're doing that, right? It's just nakedly anti-worker, anti-working class. And the C-suite is getting huge bonuses. Michelle, let's just be fair. I mean, we don't live in a democracy. We live in a corporatocracy, a fascist state. You can see it in everything that we do right now. It's to the point now where even football and baseball and hockey can't hide how bad it is. The bread and circuses isn't doing the job. And what's happening in Gaza is putting an exclamation point on it as you watch the president green light. And I know that he's doing a little bit of like performative showmanship right now with Bibi. But the reality is that whenever we need anything to go to Israel, there is billions upon billions upon billions just waiting to happen to be sent to military contractors to build out, or sell old equipment to the Israelis or whatever. And ultimately, this has been lauded by Biden during his State of the Union address as his jobs program.
Mhm.
I mean, there was one economist who sadly said Biden stuck the landing, made me sick to my
God,
stomach.
yeah.
Still haven't recovered from that.
Yeah.
But this is literally what you're watching is an all-out assault on the working class. They've manufactured these economic hard times for us while simultaneously showing with this indiscriminate measure of GDP how wonderful everyone's doing. The profits are up, but the layoffs are beginning in the houses.
Mhm.
People are starting to have issues with their living conditions. I mean, it's not good.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that you mentioned our sort of corporatized government because the next story, sure, I mean, I think that's absolutely true. And yet also, they don't even have to get down here in the muck and talk about it and virtue signal about it and all of that other stuff, at least, again, if this Wall Street Journal story is correct, because the Wall Street Journal tells me corporate America is sitting out the Trump-Biden rematch. Business leaders felt in 2020 that they couldn't afford to stay silent on social and political issues, but in 2024, many hope to take a quieter approach, and I have a clip that expresses my feelings about this.
Oh, good for you.
I'm so excited that worked. I mean, come on, you guys. So the Journal says, in the midst of what expect to be the most toxic presidential campaign in modern history, American businesses are going to extraordinary lengths to stay off the radar. CEOs are planning to tell employees not to expect comments on political matters in their meetings. Others are reconsidering election initiatives like get out the vote drives because they don't want to be seen as partisan at all. A bunch of companies are taking a harder line on workplace activism. The CEO of Google, which, as we mentioned in a show a couple of weeks ago, I think, fired a bunch of employees that staged a protest. The CEO of Google is saying he doesn't want the company to fight over politics or disruptive issues. Cisco is going to tell managers to emotionally support their staff in this trying time, but don't encourage debate. And I mean, it's not like I really want to see the Lockheed Martin Rainbow Pride Parade every year. You know what I mean? Or see.
As we said earlier in the show, we wouldn't mind if DCA expanded to demolish that.
Yeah, sure. There's put a runway over Lockheed Martin. Or like Nestle putting Black Lives Matter on its Instagram or something grotesque like that. But it does seem unfair that these entities who we know actually elect the president and actually decide who gets into Congress don't even have to be down there with the rest of us in this sort of constant tension of having to demonstrate that you are a decent person, but that you might not want to vote for Joe Biden. You know what I mean? Or you are a decent person, but you have some misgivings about the sort of legal proceedings against Donald Trump. So I did want to ask, is corporate America in any real sense sitting out this or any election?
Absolutely not. Let me explain to you that you if people haven't woken up to this yet, let this be your alarm clock. They're sitting out because the only thing that really is going to be debated is culture. We're going to have culture wars. We're going to have identity politics on tap. This is the only thing that's up for debate because the Uni Party is capitalist. And the Uni Party, which is, this ruling class, they have a shared interest. Mm-hmm. So the idea here is that, oh my God, are we going to destroy the quote unquote woke people? Mm. Which, let's be fair, is just code for the people that, would like to be able to say the N-word without retribution, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you're not talking about meaningful stuff here. You're talking about a kind of like, here, we'll let you guys quibble, over how you treat one another. But in the meantime, we're in complete lockstep on making sure that capital is served. And there's no debate there. I mean, Joe Biden is Ronald Reagan's 10th, 10th term?
Yeah.
I mean, this is like the 10th term of Reagan, right? I don't know. I didn't do the math, but it's got to be like close to that, like fifth or sixth
It's
term.
unconstitutional if it were.
Yeah, but they just keep shape shifting, right? One minute they're a little teeny guy with big ears. The next time they morph over to a black guy, and then they become an old dude, and they, whatever. It's the same Reagan. Yeah. It's the same playbook, and it's been the same playbook since Bubba Clinton and his third way and their triangulation and their neoliberal approach to things made it universal. And what you're experiencing now is the complete just mask off. But as long as people still believe that they can vote for these people and win, and we're going to win, and it's just it hurts my heart to watch them. Like glass-eyed, like your children on Christmas Eve, and they wake up with their eyes bright and they think Santa came, and there's the reindeer dust on the front porch, and cookies been eaten. I mean, this is what they are, man. They're like going to wear their I voted sticker on their forehead, and they're going to really and that's important to these corporations, and it's important to the ruling class, because if we really said, hey, this isn't real, this isn't happening, this is that placebo, the Oligarch Olympics is a placebo, they would have nothing but martial law. They would have nothing but what you're seeing happen on campuses across the country. This is why they've invested so much in not only the IRS to go after political activists and stuff like that, but also to ensure that the police force has got the latest and greatest military weapons, military gear, military trucks to crack down on people once they realize, oh my goodness, we this was a lie, and here I am now trapped. And it's really this. I think so many things have been laid bare since the pandemic. I mean, not the least of which is how money is spent into the economy right from the government you haven't had a single nickel of tax raised for all the money we've thrown over there to Ukraine or Israel. Not a penny, not a single nickel of tax increase for that. But yet somehow or another that money just sprouted out of nowhere. It shouldn't take a rocket scientist to realize that our government creates money out of thin air, spends it into existence on these things. But when it comes to you and me and our families and everything, no way, Jose. No way. They are never going to give us that stuff. Why? Because you're seeing right now, if we have freedom, if we feel free, if we don't feel the tension of the pressure, then corporate America can't control our lives.
Yeah.
And the more free we are, the more dangerous we are.
I'm going to have to go back to, we're going to let you go right after this, Steve. But, the Axios talking about how the economy adapted to 5% interest rates. It was mostly by not experiencing them. That's how it was like they locked in lower rates before 2022. And then they talked a little bit about, the Silicon Valley Bank and some other failures. And it was like, yeah, make sure there's somebody to step in and prevent you from experiencing any hardship. Like, that doesn't sound like adapting to me. It's the rest of us who've had to adapt to it.
Absolutely. And that's the point, right? Yeah. Is that they want to make sure that corporations don't fail, that corporations do well. There's a lot of consolidation in the industry. People are making out hand over fist. The ruling class, the wealthy, are doing just fine, while simultaneously the means of tamping down the greedflation that we're experiencing is to, in other words, stifle us and make us believe that our misery is the only pathway to bringing down prices. And that's a bargain I'm not willing to make.
Yeah.
They're gouging the heck out of us for their own gain. And I don't mean the profits of the corporation. I'm talking about the C-suite. I'm talking about the shareholder. They're not reinvesting that money into productive means. They're investing it back to buy back stock so that they can get bonuses based on that. And inflate the stock price. So it's not hard to figure out what's going on. It's just, don't believe your lying eyes, because to really come into grips with this, to really accept, A, I can't vote my way out of this, B, they really are lying to me, C, they will bring cops out in militarized gear if I choose to fight back. And then everybody else just goes right back to sleep and watches Golden Girls, hoping for a better tomorrow because, vote blue, vote for Summer, vote for Pedro, whatever. And that mystique is wearing off on a lot of people. A lot of people are starting to realize we don't live in a democracy. We never have lived in a democracy, but they're starting to realize that saving democracy by bringing Genocide Joe into office wasn't the win they thought it was. Yeah. And I think that, they're also realizing they don't really have any electoral power. They could be as angry as we could have 1 million people. We could have 10 million people in the streets saying, Joe, stop aiding genocide. Stop doing this, that, and the other. And the best you're going to get after, 15, 16,000 dead children is a hand wave and hey, Bibi, don't you do this or we're going to withhold our help from you.
Yeah, no.
Is there anything left?
Yeah, we already know. Steve Grumbine, really appreciate your time. Tell our listeners where they can go to find your work and where they can go to find your work with Status Quo.
Yeah, absolutely. Check me out. Saturday mornings, we release a weekly podcast called Macro and Cheese. And then, Tuesday nights, I co-host with Jordan Cheriton over there at Status Quo. So check us out there as well. And Tuesday nights, this is something new since we've talked. We have something called Macro and Chill. It's a webinar series that you can go to our website, realprogressives.org, register for the Zoom, and we get together and we talk about the podcast because our intention is to grow a smarter brand of citizen so that we can fight back against this. So that's it.
Thank you, Sim.